Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about transit south node, square opposition, or in conjunct one's natal Chiron. Now, when we're talking about transits that involve the south node, it could be about what we're going away from, the past, what you're trying to leave behind, what you may be naturally proficient in, overdeveloped, and redundant qualities. Now, when transit south node is basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Chiron, well, it may, first I'm going to elaborate on that. When I say basically adverse aspect, okay, squares and oppositions, of course, those aspects are negative and adverse in astrology. Now, the inconjunct aspect is neutral, but neutral aspects can have good and bad qualities, and coupled with the fact that an inconjunct aspect can often require an adjustment or a transition, and that in turn can cause some exasperation and tension. So collectively, basically, I do see it as an adverse transit. But anyway, when transit south node is basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Chiron, well, it could manifest in what you're going away from, your past, what you're trying to leave behind, what you may be naturally proficient in, and also overdeveloped and redundant qualities. These things may conflict with your physical and emotional wounds. It could be something where someone from the past may be acting in a way which is causing, your emotional wounds, your suffering, emotional turmoil. Maybe it's exacerbating it. I mean, if you have, like, say, the transit south node in Virgo in the 11th house, say it could be a very critical or judgmental friend, as an example, maybe coming back, and it could be something where if you're already feeling down on yourself and somebody's casting aspersions on you, of course that's adding like insult to abject misery, and it could exacerbate the emotional suffering you could be going through. And it could be where if there's something the transit south node can be to one's detriment, and depending on the sign, the house that it's in, and if it could be somehow connected with increased physical suffering. I mean, if you're having someone from the past, or it could be something, or you're doing things that you may be at the time you're comfortable with, your comfort zone. If it's causing a distraction for you trying to treat your physical, ailments and, suffering, it can indirectly make those things worse, because if you're not putting the time in to treat yourself and try to, heal, whatever it is that might be physically going on, then of course those things could worsen. Um, Another thing is that Chiron can be connected also with where our ineptitude, where we may feel inept in our weakness as well. And if again, if somebody, as I stated before, someone from the past is coming back, and it's somebody that maybe it could be an overly judgmental person, or a person that even if they're just joking, quote unquote joking, and they're not being malicious, it could be things they could be saying that might be, causing some, exacerbation, as far as what you feel your weaknesses at the time. And it might be, I mean, if you have, like, say, for example, if your natal Chiron is in Scorpio, maybe you feel there's some ineptitude or weakness in terms of dealing with upheavals and crisis. And if somebody comes to you, out of your past, saying it's somebody that is dealing with some predicament, or they're in some kind of crisis, and you feel you're in a situation, you feel you can't, handle it, or you don't really have, that ability, to deal with it. It could, these things could fester, and it can make, yourself, cause more suffering inside, because it just makes you, it's a reminder of what you feel, at least feel that you have an inability for. And another thing too is that Chiron can be associated with a depleted self-esteem, diminished self-worth, and how you feel about yourself. And the thing about this is, South Node It could be, I mean, it is connected. It could be connected with overdeveloped and redundant qualities. And if these things are coming out where, you're expressing some, overdeveloped, redundant behavior, and it's not really something that's to your benefit. The way, you might be viewed negatively, it might even worsen, your depleted self-esteem, or could indicate that a depleted self-esteem may make it more, difficult for you to perhaps deal with people that are from, that are from your past. They may be people of significance, and it could be where, you might not feel, you have the confidence to do what it is they may be requesting. If somebody is asking for some kind of assistance, or request for help at this time, it can be something where it might, it might, where you're, if there's any kind of diminished self-worth or self-esteem, it could impact on you, doing, attempting to try to help them with this. Now, if you're doing something where, if the depleted self-esteem is such where it's causing great despondency, or you're depressed, of course, that could even be, it could be worse, and then you might not really just feel, like interacting with anybody if somebody is coming out of your past at this time. Now, another thing too is that Chiron is also associated with helping and healing others. It's not all, negative or adverse. I mean, Chiron is known as the wounded healer. It can reflect what, ways you can help others that you are having difficulty in helping yourself in. In ways, you can help, you could assist other people, but you can't seem to help yourself in that same manner. Now, the thing about this is, and it might even be difficulty if you're trying to help, and heal, somebody, might be something from, you might be trying to get, if you're trying to get out, I should say, if you're trying to get out of, going away from helping and healing somebody, you might be difficult, you might be in a situation where it's almost like an obligation at this time. It's not, the time, because the South Node is connected with what you're trying to get away from, the past. If you're meant to help people, this is where, it's going to be harder to get away from. Remember, if you have the transit South Node, say, in opposition to your natal Chiron, of course, the transit North Node will be conjunct your natal Chiron, so that could actually be part of your future if an opposition aspect is transpiring at this time. Now, and let's say you have the natal Chiron in Pisces in the 11th house. It could be showing a lot of sacrificing energy for friends, being compassionate toward them, altruism, in groups. This is where, you could also, or even through the metaphysical, which can include astrology, in doing so for friends. This is something too where, Chiron is also connected, with the deepest pain. My natal Chiron is in Aries in the 12th house, so it could be stated that my deepest pain could very well be, maybe it has its tied into solitude and seclusion and being alone and desolate. It could be the fact that it's in Aries. It could be battles that I've had, battles I may have lost, whether physical or otherwise, and it's tied into secret sorrows, or even lack of a, maybe impulsive or impetuous behavior, which could be Aries, is the self-undoing, which is the 12th house, as some examples. And, lack of aggression and enterprise, again, secret sorrows, the self-undoing. This is when you have the transit South Node, say I'm having, let's say, for example, if I'm having transit South Node making an adverse aspect to my natal Chiron, then it could be something else that's happening to my detriment, perhaps, is causing difficulty in me trying to deal with that natal Chiron energy. But anyway, now another way this transit could manifest, it could be someone from your past may adversely affect you attempting to help and heal others at the time of this transit. Let's say, for example, if the transit South Node is in Taurus in the 8th house, It could simply be, the person from your past may have given you maybe very stable, persistent, which is Taurus, and support, which is the 8th house. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, it may also be harder to get away from, which is the South Node, from emotional and physical suffering, which is Chiron. Now, if Chiron, say you have it in Gemini in the 3rd house as an example, it could be issues, physical issues with the hands, the arms, may be affecting or impairing your ability to drive and mobility in general, which is the 3rd house. Could be issues with nerves, it's another example as far as Gemini goes. Now, another thing too is that, something that may affect you to your detriment, which is the South Node, may challenge perhaps you trying to deal with depleted self-esteem or self-worth at this time, which is Chiron. Let's say if the transit South Node is in Pisces in the 11th house as an example. It could be dealing with some betrayal or deception or duplicity, which is Pisces. It could be by friends, by acquaintances, people you know in groups, clubs, or organizations, which is the 11th house. Now, and also, too, another way this transit may be expressed, it could be what you feel comfortable doing, what you might feel be complacent in at this time, which is a South Node, may challenge you, perhaps dealing with your deepest pain at this time. And that, of course, is Chiron. Now, let's say, again, going back to my example, having Chiron and Aries in the 12th house natally, it could be, again, just the lack of, aggression, initiative, enterprise, being the self-undoing and tied into secret sorrows, maybe not having the courage and fortitude to work through my limitations and restrictions. And it might be difficult to trying to heal those wounds at this time because the transit South Node making an adverse aspect to the natal Chiron. But anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.